Welcome to another episode coming at you from ChooseYourRelationships.com, author of Love Can't Wait, which can be found on Amazon.com. So today I have a special guest. She's a German trained naturopathic doctor, humanistic psychotherapist, and family constellation facilitator. She's an she has an award winning book, Blossom, Your 7 Steps to Sexual Healing, and the creator of Pleasure IQ and Blissful Marriage Method. She has a podcast called Divine Unity, which talks about love, sex, spirituality. She's an internationally recognized speaker and teacher on subject of spirituality, relationships, emotional healing, and bonding based lovemaking. She combines her knowledge about energetic healing and conscious co-creation to help couples go from feeling frustrated, stuck, and disconnected in their intimacy to feeling deeply connected, excited, fulfilled, so that they can feel whole and fully expressed in life and are able to create the honeymoon feeling that lasts. Her work is based on the intersection of cutting edge intimacy advice, practicality applied, quantum physics, and biology. It shows how each individual authentic and true self is the source of one's own good, a piece of unlimited abundance, creativity, courage, and joyful experience. My special guest today is Carolin Hauser. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So again, thanks for taking time to do this.
I love your shirt.
Yeah, it's God is great, but respect is better. I
Well,
appreciate that.
yeah.
So where are you from originally?
I am from Germany. I grew up in the countryside. I'm a country girl. Grew up with nature, lots of nature, and yeah. And my
So
family.
how did you get here in America, North America?
God knows exactly what he has to do to lure me into different things. So I fell in love with an American in Germany. Otherwise, I would have never come probably. And came here. Relationship didn't last, but I really fell in love with Santa Barbara, where I ended up living for 15 years, and yeah,
Mm,
that's apparently that's where I needed to be.
mm. So how did you get into this line of work? How did you become a psychotherapist and love teaching people how to love bond? How and I know that didn't happen by accident.
No, so well, the story might sound a little out there, but I really truly remember being somewhere up in heaven, just minding my own business, and then God coming along and saying, "Hey, we need a few people down on earth. Like the people really have trouble getting along, especially men and women have trouble getting along. Who wants to go and help?" And my hand just kind of like went whoop. So I got myself a ticket down to earth. And of course, when you raise your hand to come and help with relationships, obviously I was planted into a family where there was a lot of trauma and stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so when you ask, how did I get into it? Well, my lineage, where I come from, because I'm born in Europe, there was a lot of trauma from the war. My mom's dad lost his parents. So when he was little, right, my grandpa lost his parents when he was little. For my grandma's side, only half of the adults really survived that were like our ages in that time. And so my mom and my dad, they both grew up with parents that had a lot of wounding, and then they made me. And so needless to say, that their relationship was good in many aspects, and then there were aspects that weren't so good. And I struggled a lot with myself. I had eating disorders. I had bulimia and anorexia
Mm.
for a long time, and nothing helped. And just struggled with being here and figuring this whole thing out. Essentially, that's what got me into it.
So how did you know you could help people? Like, I mean, well, how did you get started in the beginning stages? Did people come to you? Or how did they find out about you?
First, I really didn't. I really just wanted to get better myself. So from 10 till 20, I had these eating disorders, and all I wanted to have was just a normal life. I just wanted to be able to have a normal relationship, and I really couldn't. And
Mm.
so my mom and my dad and other people kept trying to introduce things to me. And then finally, one time, my mom introduced me to Family Constellations workshop, which I didn't know what it was, and most of you probably don't know what it is, but it's basically it was done in a group setting where you would go and people would help you clear your subconscious blocks. And I went there and I went through a weekend experience, and then within like a few months after that, the eating disorders went away. So that was huge because nothing had helped. And so one day I was waiting tables. I didn't quite know what to do with my life. A friend of mine came by and I had a little time and we started talking, and I told him the story, and he was like, man, if you found something that's helped your eating disorders, you got to learn this. And since I didn't have anything better to do, right, I was just waiting tables. I'm like, yeah, like I should be doing something better with my life. I had always felt like I was here for a greater purpose, but I didn't quite know how and what, and I felt so messed up. And so that's kind of like what set me off to studying this modality in my 20s and traveling and then I would get people's feedback, and they would just tell me that I was really good at what I was doing. And so it came really from other people encouraging me, and also wanting, I have a deep love for God and spirit, or whatever you want to call it, and really wanting to be of service. I just wanted to figure out a way how it could help.
Yeah, that's very similar to how I got started, helping guys, well, helping men and women with dating advice. I never wanted to do this. And when I say that, people were surprised. They're like, what do you mean? I never really wanted to do this. I never thought about doing it. All I was doing is just living my life, and I was doing videos on YouTube at the time. And people just started asking questions. Hey, how is it there? How'd you meet those people? But the questions just kept coming in. And then had a friend of my wife at the time. She used to come over a lot, and I had this Word file on my computer at the time, and I used to write a blog. So I used to write like articles in advance. I'm talking like 3 months in advance. So all I had to do was basically just post on the blog. And so she came over and she read what I had, and she said, hey, you need to publish this. I said, what do you mean? Publish like how? A book. And I said, well, I didn't know you could self-publish at the time. I didn't even, the only publishing I ever heard of was like the big book publishing or whatever. Yeah. And then she's like, yeah, you can do it. You need to put this out. And then the channel took off at the same time. And then I started getting more questions, and that's how things sort of came about. But I never wanted to do this.
Awesome. Yeah.
So things happen, and sometimes in mysterious ways sometimes, So what is bonding based lovemaking exactly?
I am so glad you asked. Well, it's something very different than we're used to, and for people to understand and not go like, oh my god, this is a crazy lady, I don't want to listen to her. I just have to give you a little bit of the scientific background, and also it ties into my story. So I had a lot of relationship turmoil and was looking for something to help me just have better, more stable relationships. And some of my friends knew this, and one of them in particular came across there's a specific book that talks about bonding based lovemaking, and a woman that spent a lot of time discovering this and collecting research in the book. It's called Cupid's Poisoned Arrow. So my friend found this book, read it. Some of it made sense to her, but she wasn't quite desperate enough to try what's in the book because it's somewhat extreme. And so she gave it to me and said, hey, maybe this is the key to your happiness. And in the book, the woman described very similar story to mine, where relationships would start out great. There would be so much love and connection, and then inadvertently it would go away. And it was like, why? Why are we such two different people? Why can't we just stay the same people that we were when we met? And so she started really digging deep and researching and looking into first ancient texts like Tantra and Taoism, and found description, and even in the Christian literature, like in the esoteric Christianity, there were pointers towards that we as human beings have two programs for lovemaking. One, the one that we know, she calls it procreation based, where we have sex to make babies basically. And obviously that's connected, well, not obviously, but that program is connected to a lot of pleasure because the species wants to survive. So somebody was very clever there, to connect like the orgasm and the pleasure to us procreating so that we keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But they also described in these scriptures that there would be a different way, and that different way would be better and would make it so that we would retain our energy and stay in a better state of being. And so it wasn't quite clear what this other way was. It was very nondescript. It was just basically you don't have sex with an orgasm, basically. And that seemed kind of like not so great, right? Because it feels so good. Like, who would want to do that? But that being said, she started experimenting, and she started finding men that were willing to experiment with her. And so they also started researching more and found that there was actually a movement in the 17 and 1800s of people that learned to make love in a different way, where they didn't have an orgasm, but basically achieved a different kind of connection and high. And so she couldn't quite explain, or back then they couldn't quite explain why that was. And today neuroscience has caught up with it. So essentially what Marnia, who wrote the book, found is that when we have an orgasm, and she found this through research that she found, is that we have a dopamine spike. We have a spike in dopamine, which is a brain chemical. And it's very similar to taking cocaine or heroin. So it's highly addictive. But it also makes it so that once we've had it, like within minutes, our dopamine drops and we start feeling not so good. We just don't make the connection because we don't know this. So when we get up grumpy the next day, or when we just don't feel so well a few days later, we don't make the connection that the reason why we feel the way we feel comes from having had an orgasm. Because in the moment it feels so good and it feels like we're bonding. But in terms of like brain chemistry, what happens, it's actually really not good for us. And so there's a different set of hormones that we can trigger with this other kind of lovemaking, where you don't necessarily have like like fireworks like that, but it's more gradual and you feel really good and feel really connected. And when you start practicing it over time, your brain will start liking it more. And because you stop having these explosions in your brain that are really not good for you, for your hormone system and your nervous system, your whole health and everything is starting to get better, and you start feeling better. Plus, when we have these shifts in our subconscious through the hormonal shifts and the chemistry shift, our view of the world and of our partner shifts. And so part of why when we have wild sex and crazy sex, why we have the mood swings, is because of our perception shifts. When we have these hormonal swings, we just don't put it, we do, I didn't know this, right? I didn't put two and two together. And it took like practicing and really seeing, like trying to do this other way and not having orgasms for a while, and then going back to it. It took that for me to see like how different I was and how more stable I was, and the mood swings would go away and the fights would go away, and it's just huge. So bonding based lovemaking is a way of making love that doesn't include orgasm. It's a different kind of chemical mix that also makes you feel really good. And instead of creating these ruptures and separation and mood swings, it creates a stable, continuous bond and brings a lot of harmony can bring a lot of harmony to our unions. Sorry, that was not answer, but I had to give it to you that way.
Oh, I love it. I love it. There was this lady that my mom knew when I was growing up. I was a teenager, like 15, 16 at the time. And she was, her husband left her, right? And when her husband left, she got sick. She was sick for until I was about 21. From 15 to 21, she was sick the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? And, she had high blood pressure. She was a diabetic. And some other stuff, I didn't know what it was. And when her husband came back, she wasn't sick no more. And I was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
I'm young. I don't know these things. I didn't really understood until I got older. And then I observed, I started living my own life, and I started observing women, how they function and how their mood swings change, and and just like you said, they start to see things different, and they have a different perception of me and their surroundings. And I'm like, that was it. Because the lady went back to the doctor, and they was like, man, I don't, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
I thought that was so crazy. So what happens if women don't have this experience? I mean, uh, I mean, I know it's hard to say, but it's probably going to vary from woman to woman. But what usually happens if women don't have the love bonding experience?
And I mean, this goes both ways, for men and women.
Yeah.
So generally, either they completely disconnect and just have no interest anymore. And in terms of like what happens to our body, it's almost like our bodies dry up. There's not a lot of pleasure in life. There's, maybe hobbies and stuff, but it's really a different, it's like almost like you're living on like half, on two cylinders if you're a 6-cylinder car or something like that, where just something is not there. Because I believe that as human beings, the masculine and the feminine, we're really created to be together and learn how to generate this energy flow together so we can thrive, in life in entirety. So in a sense, when we have it, we thrive, everything gets better, we get uplifted. And when we don't have it, it's almost like we're like a withering plant.
So how does so talk about energy? I mean, how do you does a lot of it has to do with, because I know that some people say it's good energy, bad energy.
Yeah.
Talking about how you protect your energy. Talk about that.
Yeah. So somebody I really like following is David Hawkins. He's no longer living, but he did a lot of measuring.
Oh yeah.
He came up with this whole scale of consciousness, it's called, basically, where he measured our own, like, people's states of being. So when we feel good, we're in a high vibrational state of being, we have lots of energy, we get lots of stuff done. When we're not feeling good, we're in a low vibrational state of being. So depression, anxiousness, all those things are just a sign that somewhere we're low energy, in a sense, and I'm simplifying it. But so people think energy is something super woohoo. It's not. Einstein even said it, that everything's energy, right?
Yeah.
We are energy. And when I work with couples, I try to really bring it out of like the complicated strategies. So, excuse me. Oopsie.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you. Bring it from the psychological and the like trying to learn any kind of strategies to really practical things. And so if you can understand that you're an energetic being, when things don't work, it just means that your energy has gotten low, and literally like the amount of electricity that you run your life with, there's things that we can do that make it so that our energy is better, and then there's things that make it so our energy is not good. Having sex with orgasm is one of the things that makes it so that over time our energy goes down. Making bonding based love, or having bonding based lovemaking, makes it so that our energy builds up. The way we eat, whether we have a spiritual practice, whether we move our bodies, all those things impact us, right? And so there's things that people can do on their own, and there's things that they can do together to make sure that their energy gets into a higher state of being. And so right now, especially in the times that we're in, it seems like there's so much chaos and things are so complicated. But if you just really focus on you and your energy, and I'm just telling you, for me, yes, I've lived the last couple of years with COVID, but honestly, my own life, because I focus so much on just making sure that my energetic state of being is good, my life's been okay. My kids have been okay. The things that I need come to me. I've been healthy, and it all comes from having these practices. So one thing that I really like to say is we don't have power over other people. We don't have power over outer circumstances, but we absolutely have the power over our own state of being, and whatever we can learn and do to make sure that our state of being is high, blissful, loving, happy. That's our best insurance, against anything.
Yeah, I can relate to seems like when I have a good vibe, good energy, it seems like everything
flows
so smooth, but when it's the opposite, oh God. I'll be like, look, I just need to go home and just meditate and just relax
Yeah.
for a day. and
Shift.
then recharge, you know. But see, the problem here in North America, the environment that we live in is so toxic. People are negative all the time.
Yeah, you really have to start creating your own little environments and make your home a sacred place and having these sacred practices in a sense to bring that energy, bring it into your home. You can bring energy into your home and, be in your own kind of energy bubble in a sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, so I guess like so you work with people worldwide or local, or how do you operate?
Yeah, so I live in Sedona, which there's a lot of people that come to Sedona just for healing work. So I'm very blessed to be able to work locally with people. Couples come and they just want to go on a retreat and they Google Sedona and then they find people like me, or there's lots of us here. And then I also do a lot of, podcasting and have my own YouTube channel to really reach people all over the world. So I do both. Yeah.
So what inspired you to do the podcast?
Really just, I want to, well, I believe that bonding based lovemaking is the key ingredient to really making love last, like making it so that even after like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you're still totally into each other, right? Who wouldn't want that? Right. And so even I did not discover it, but once I read the book, I'm like, everybody has to know this, like this is the key. And so I just feel like it's my job to like run around and yell it from the rooftops and say, hey people, if you want this, there is a solution. It might be a little, out there, and it might take a little time. It might not be so easy to, if your brain is kind of addicted to having orgasms, it might be a little while, it might take a little something, but it's it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah.
You want to make feelings for the rest of your life with your partner and don't have to be afraid of being bored, or even if, so for a lot of couples that come to me, they really love each other, but there's just like nothing there anymore, right? But it comes back.
Yeah, you can get it back because it happened to me 3 times. Because what happens, with me, what happened is sometimes, you get so busy being busy doing things.
Yeah.
And you just forget how it used to be. And you'd be like, oh man, I've been neglecting you, and you don't really plan it that way.
No, we're programmed to work, we're programmed for survival. So most of us, if we don't watch it, we fall into like just a program of like working. And we're not programmed for pleasure, right? The generations, when I say programmed, the generations before us did not have the luxury to just live and have an amazing life, right? They had to work to survive basically. And so that's what's in us. That's what we think we have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, based on my experience, when 2 people have a connection or a strong bond and they care about each other, it's going to be very difficult for them to just be like, hey, I'm out of here. It's easy to leave when there's nothing there.
When there's no bond. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to leave,
When you switch into bonding based lovemaking, and some couples, 13% of couples find this naturally, actually, without ever like knowing what it really is. But it uses the same chemical mechanism as nature uses to bond an infant to a mother or mother to an infant, right? A mother would never leave the infant. That's why there's another very strong chemical thing that happens, and we can have the same bond as adults basically, and making it so that we feel really stable and cared for. Just like mother and child, it's the same mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this should be common practice, but it's not gonna happen.
Well, I'm committed to doing a lot of interviews and
yeah, that's great. But I'm talking like on a mass scale.
Maybe in 100 years.
Maybe.
I believe that in ancient times this was common knowledge because people didn't always want to get pregnant. Like they knew that they could make love in a different way that didn't lead to be getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And then that knowledge was kind of like taken away because once we're just busy, making babies and caring for babies and trying to feed them, we're kind of like the sheeple that nobody needs to worry about.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm an optimist. I believe that oh, hey, if we get there, we won't be here to see it, you know. So how do you get over your past? Let's say your past hurts, or maybe you had things that happened in your past. I know a lot of time that blocks uh what's your present, relationships with how you interact with other people. How do you get past that? How do you get past the baggage, so to speak?
Yeah, it really has to do with your state of being. So just imagine when you are in a happy state of being, generally, even when past resentments come up, you're like, it wasn't really so bad. Like you look at it differently and you respond differently. Like when you're depressed and something comes up, it's like drama and like it will take days. When you're in a good state of being, there might still be stuff that bothers you, but you're able to communicate and be lighthearted about it, and just all of a sudden, your perception is really different. When
Yeah,
you're in a good state of being, your perception is really different. So it's not that those things are not there, but all of a sudden they don't matter because you're like focused on the future, you're focused on how good things are right now, and you're able to just they don't have the weight that they have when you're in a different state of being.
yeah,
So he is really your state of being because that makes it really that makes it so that you're either lighthearted or you're like begrudging.
yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, I had a lot of people die around me, like over the past 10 years. People
Yeah,
close to me, like my parents, my grandparents, whatever. It's like people ask me, "Hey, how did I keep moving forward?" Because you don't get over it. You know,
yeah,
well, all I did is just thought about the good times when
yeah,
they were here and we spent time together, and they lived to be old, lived to
yeah,
be 80, 90, 100 years old. So
yeah,
I think about the good times, and I did what they what I thought they would want me to do. Just keep living.
yeah. Yeah, and it's not about not having your feelings or not being sad or not having emotions, but then
Yeah.
having the correct perceptions that, like you said, focusing on the good memories and knowing that they're in a good place now and focusing on being here while you're here.
Exactly. So if people wanted to reach out to you and work with you, where would they go to?
The best place to go is to go to blissfulmarriagetraining.com. I actually have a free training that goes into like the 4 shifts that I help people make to really be able to um, make it so that attraction and love never goes away or comes back if it's gone away. And then also just under my name, Carolin Hauser, my website is carolinhauser.com. And on Facebook, YouTube, it's all just Carolin Hauser.
Okay. So share this episode. All links will be found in the show notes. Tell me what you think. Until next time, we out. Peace.